Welcome back to another episode of ACR on Air, the official podcast of the American College of Rheumatology. I am your host, Dr. John Hausman. For our first episode of 2025, we've crafted a special one featuring two leaders in rheumatology, Dr. Carol Langford, president of the American College of Rheumatology, and Dr. Adam Goode, president of the Association for Rheumatology Professionals. They share their journeys into leadership, key initiatives for 2025, and their vision for advancing the field of rheumatology. They'll discuss workforce shortages, technological advances affecting our profession, and how to foster a more inclusive community. This conversation will give you an in-depth look at the collaborative efforts driving the ACR and ARP. Dr. Carol Langford received her MD at UCLA. She trained in internal medicine at the University of Michigan and completed her fellowship in rheumatology at Duke University, where she also received a master's in health sciences. For the past 2 decades, she has been at the Cleveland Clinic and is the director of the Center for Vasculitis Care and Research. She's professor of medicine of the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine of Case Western and vice chair of rheumatology for research. Dr. Adam Goode completed his Doctor of Physical Therapy from Duke University and obtained a PhD in epidemiology from UNC Chapel Hill. He's been faculty at Duke University School of Medicine also for the past 2 decades, where he's currently a professor in the departments of orthopedic surgery and population health sciences. He's the vice chair of clinical research for the Department of Orthopedic Surgery and an associate director of the Duke Clinical Research Institute Fellowship Program. He conducts research on musculoskeletal pain mechanisms. Both Carol and Adam have volunteered for the ACR and ARP in numerous roles over the years, and now they lead their respective institutions. Hope you enjoy this great discussion. Adam and Carol, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Great to be here.
So we're talking about the leadership of the ACR and ARP, and thank you both for being here, and very happy New Year. Carol, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up leading the ACR in 2025?
Yeah, so I attended my first ACR meeting in 1991. And I really knew at an early point, as far as the ACR was an organization I wanted to be a part of. And I started becoming involved in volunteer activities shortly after starting my first faculty position about 30 years ago. And I've been grateful as far as to continue in different volunteer opportunities really since that time, different roles, learning along the way from others around the table. And really what inspired me to take on this role was my belief as far as the importance of the ACR mission to its members and ultimately to the patients they care for. You know, my professional work has been in patient care education and research related to vasculitis. And working together with others around the world in pursuing these goals, gave me some insights as far as regarding the importance of in addressing challenges. And that was something I very much saw reflected in a similar way in the ACR. And I think this background sort of helped to shape some of the approach in recognizing that challenges really exist on many fronts for us in rheumatology, but these can be addressed most effectively when we work together as a common goal. And certainly that's something that I, look forward to as far as during my presidency, working with those in the ACR and working with people like Adam.
Love it. Adam, tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up leading the ARP.
Yeah, I think similar to Carol, I have a history of membership and volunteer activity with ACR and ARP going back to when I was a PhD student and working on my PhD in epidemiology and working with some researchers and leadership in ARP and ACR. And they really brought me into the value of volunteering and working alongside of other interprofessional members of ARP and developing that network. And over time, also started to volunteer more and more on committees, not just ARP, but ACR committees and enjoyed the collaboration really between both ACR and ARP and also the members and attending it at, Convergence and presenting research and going to sessions at Convergence. And over time, after many different volunteer activities, ARP invited me to join their leadership pathway. And that includes mentoring towards presidency and serving as secretary for ARP and then president-elect. And yeah, that's kind of, how I got involved and through the leadership pathway and track to the present, and look forward to this year working with Carol.
Amazing. I didn't even know there was a leadership path. That's good to know. Carol, you talked a little bit about community and sort of that you found the ACR provided community. Can you talk a little bit about your priorities for 2025?
For me, it always comes back to the ACR mission, which is empowering rheumatology professionals to excel in their specialty. And the mission is not as a result of the president, but is really because of the vision and dedication of our volunteers and staff. But during this year, I do hope to highlight, 3 areas of their important work. The first is in the area of education, and this is near and dear to my heart, not only because a lot of my past ACR volunteer activities have been focused around that, but also because the need for lifelong growth is one of the privileges that we have as rheumatologists. So, I'll try to highlight as far as the ways that ACR can meet each person's educational objectives. The rapid advancements that we've seen is really the results of research, which has been the catalyst for advancements that have improved the lives of our patients. And in my second goal, I hope to highlight how ACR is there to really support investigators in the conduct, funding, presentation, and publication of their research. And then finally, my third goal is really enhancing connections between the ACR and its members, so that everyone in that community sees their own objectives and priorities reflected through the ACR's dedication to its mission.
Love it. Adam, what do you plan for 2025 with the ARP?
Yeah, I think similar to Carol, advancing the mission of ACR is the number one priority. And with ARP, the ARP Executive Committee has developed our priorities for moving forward into 2025 and beyond. And a couple of those are related to fostering communication, not only between the leadership, but the leadership to the members, communication with our committee chairs, our committee members, and also our member to members, because we have such an interprofessional number of disciplines. Increasing that communication between those different disciplines is key for us. Like Carol mentioned, our educational offering and programs are a key for ARP. We have many different educational programs that we not only develop, but update throughout the year. And that's a very important aspect for us as we move forward into 2025, is to update our current educational programs, but also to develop new ones for training of our providers and interprofessional members of ARP. And lastly, I think our volunteer experience, what's key for ARP and ACR is our volunteers, and, making sure they have a good experience and we attract and retain our volunteers for leadership and service is another key area for us moving forward. So those 3 priorities are key for us. And I don't know that we'll accomplish all of them in 2025, but it'll get us going on a good pace, I think.
Good. It's like the compass. At least you know where you want to head. That's always important. I think one of the challenges that we're facing in rheumatology is workforce shortages. I took part in the workforce team, I guess almost a decade ago, that showed that the number of people needing rheumatology care is increasing exponentially, and yet we don't seem to have enough providers to take care of those patients. How do you think, Adam, the ARP can help with issues of workforce shortages and try to sort of recruit and retain interdisciplinary professionals within rheumatology?
Yeah, I think ARP is a great resource to help tackle some of the workforce shortages that are occurring right now, and especially with our APPs and educating and attracting APPs into rheumatology to help to address some of the access to care and shortages for patients in rheumatology is going to be key. But also, how can we engage other disciplines within our interprofessional organization of ARP to help with this workforce, some of the workforce challenges that we're having? And I think, one of the areas that ACR and ARP are combining with is, development of the Workforce Solutions Task Force, which includes both ACR and ARP members. And, how can we increase our APPs and decrease patient wait times is going to be key for us moving forward to help tackle some of these challenges in the workforce.
Carol, what about recruiting the next generation of rheumatologists? How do you think the ACR can help with these shortages?
It was pointed out as far as because many rheumatic diseases will become more frequent with age, as you pointed out, Joe, we've actually long recognized that the need for rheumatologic care is going to continue to grow within the American population. And the workforce studies done by the ACR have demonstrated that the supply and demand balance by 2030 will be facing a workforce shortage. Now, adding to this is also that there's a disparity in the availability of rheumatologic care in different areas across the country, and this particularly affects pediatric rheumatology. As Adam pointed out, the ACR has worked together with ARP in actively pursuing workforce solutions, which have focused on looking at innovative methods for fellowship positions and training providers who are committed to remaining in underserved areas, recruitment opportunities, fostering patient-centered communities, the options as far as that might be available for virtual training, and certainly grant support for that education is important. And very much we also recognize the rheumatology health professionals within ARP not only represent critical and valuable members of the rheumatology healthcare team, but they're an essential part of the workforce solution, which is why it's so important that we continue to work together and working with Adam as far as how we can be able to address these issues moving forward, which affect our entire community.
Yeah, so important. We've had some excellent APPs that are helping out in our clinic. Unfortunately, retaining them has been a challenge. So it takes a while for them to get trained, and then they're up and running, and then for various reasons, then they leave our practice, and it's been challenging. I'm glad to hear that the ACR and ARP have that on their radar. What about diversity? Ideally, we'd like a rheumatology workforce that looks and represents the types of patients that we see. But as we know in medicine in general and rheumatology in specific, there's a lack of diversity within our workforce. What is the ACR and ARP doing to try to ensure a more inclusive rheumatology community?
Yeah, great question. One of the things that comes up and comes to mind with ARP is our diversity of our professionals within our membership. And, our hope is that every profession within our membership and ARP and within rheumatology is at the table, and that they're engaged to provide the best and comprehensive basic patient care. And that comes from our members, volunteers working on DEI initiatives. In particular, we have the DEI committee, composed of both ACR and ARP members. And it's really a college-wide initiative. We focus on mentoring, faculty diversity, underserved areas, volunteer and awardee diversity. So, I think there's a lot of initiatives, a lot of areas where ARP, especially with its diverse membership and professionals that it represents, plays a key role in helping to improve that workforce diversity out there in rheumatology.
I've certainly seen it, in Convergence now. There are some sessions focused on diversity and encouraging diverse trainees or, students interested in rheumatology and diverse faculty members to get together for like mentoring opportunities. Any other initiatives that you want to highlight, Carol, to try to bring a more inclusive rheumatology workforce?
Yeah, I think it's important to emphasize that diversity, equity, and inclusion are vital, not only to strengthening the workforce itself, but really is fundamental to everything we do at the ACR. The strongest team is really a diverse team in which we have wide-ranging skills and perspectives around the table. We have a DEI mission statement as far as where we initiate and collaborate to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is not only throughout the field of rheumatology, but also in what we do in the ACR as far as seeking diverse membership, leadership, and the operations of the college. Adam mentioned as far as the work of our Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And this important body of work really represents an even broader approach in which the ACR is really seeking to examine really everything we do through a DEI lens to ensure that all of the voices are being represented and feel a sense of belonging, which was an important aspect of diversity, equity, inclusion that was stressed by our past president, Deborah Diet-Desir.
Great. You both mentioned sort of these issues of DEI. I wonder how the ACR and ARP work together and collaborate. Like, are there specific initiatives that you're both working on to try to sort of bring forth all the members of ACR and ARP to work together? Can you share some examples about some collaboratives that you're excited about, Adam?
Yeah, I think this is an area where there's always work and initiatives that are being developed that include both ACR and ARP. I think looking back at even leadership, there's ARP leadership on the ACR executive committee, the board of directors. There's now more initiatives towards co-chairing committees together. For example, Carol and I were co-chairs of the membership and awards committee last year, a very important committee, a lot of great and exciting work that's done around membership and awards. And it gives us an opportunity to work together in both ARP and ACR awards and membership and develop that relationship together. There's other committees that now bring together co-chair opportunities, or there's ARP members on ACR committees and ACR members on ARP committees. So there's continuous efforts around building that collaboration. There's also opportunities where there's ARP and ACR speakers at Convergence. And so, that's another way that we're working with common topics to build common topics and with both ARP and ACR together. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of efforts to address some of those challenges, and working together is obviously one way that helps to do that.
Great. Carol, your thoughts on collaborations with the ARP for 2025?
Yeah, no, I think Adam highlighted a lot of those. Really, members of ACR and ARP are all part of our larger rheumatology community. And while we exist as two organizations to support our unique professional needs of our respective members, we really have the same goals of improving the lives of patients with rheumatic disease. And I think, as Adam pointed out, we have important initiatives which we do together in terms of education at our meetings, research, and addressing the workforce needs. And again, I think in moving forwards in 2025, as Adam pointed out, he and I have already built a great relationship as far as our work on the membership and awards committee that I think will continue moving forwards. And having his voice and the president-elect of ARP within the ACR executive committee also provides ACR with a broader view as far as thinking about how our two organizations can work together as far as improving patient care.
Excellent. I wanted to ask you about sort of innovation. It's 2025, and it seems like healthcare is changing at a very rapid pace. I mean, the COVID pandemic brought us telemedicine, which really wasn't present. And within a couple of weeks, everybody was doing encounters on Zoom. Recently, ChatGPT and artificial intelligence has taken the world by storm and is certainly already changing the way that, for instance, I document my notes, right? I have an AI scribe that listens to our conversations and now helps me with the notes. So I wonder, Carol, if you could talk about how you see technology, like telemedicine, precision medicine, artificial intelligence. How do you see that playing a role in your goals for 2025? And how do you see the ACR being set up to ensure that members are prepared to address these rapid challenges and innovation within healthcare?
Yeah, so, I think we have to recognize that innovation and technology has really played a critical role in the advancement of medicine. And it's essential that we explore and utilize technology in a manner that benefits our patients. There's really little doubt that artificial intelligence tools are coming to many aspects of rheumatologic care. And as you mentioned, there are some that are already in place. In terms of the goals I mentioned previously, I think AI provides particularly exciting opportunities for investigators in pursuing novel research avenues. In terms of clinical care, we're rapidly developing and moving towards an environment where data is being collected from many different sources, patients, phone apps, wearable devices, where this could be placed into algorithms by AI. I think it's important that we support transparency around the derivation of these algorithms to assure reliability, prevention of bias, and that these are protecting patient confidentiality, and importantly, that they can't be used to limit patient access to care. It's also my personal view as far as that while AI is a powerful and exciting tool that will have benefits, it cannot replace the essential role that we must continue to have in the clinic and at the bedside in the care of our patients.
Yeah. Adam, what are your thoughts about all of these technologies within the ARP?
Carol brought up some excellent points, and I think this is another example of how ARP and ACR can work together to really combine some of these areas to address those gaps, those areas of need for both ACR and ARP. For example, the workforce solutions, as you mentioned, COVID brought us telemedicine, and how can we expand that to help with our access to care in different underserved areas and improving patient care and outcomes. So I think, those are definitely areas that would benefit both ARP and ACR in collaboration, because we're trying to address, a particular area of rheumatology. Moving forward is how do we use these areas like AI to advance patient care, to advance research, improve precision and precision medicine for better outcomes.
Yeah. Great. You both brought up the issues of challenges in accessing care. Carol, as you mentioned, there's some states in the US that don't have a pediatric rheumatologist. In states that do, often there's large waits. Patients have challenges in obtaining their medication sometimes. What is the ACR doing to advocate on behalf of patients to make sure that they reserve the care that they need?
Yeah, it's a very important issue as far as moving forwards. And the ACR has numerous initiatives that are focused on health equity and promoting a positive social impact through programs that are aimed at educating rural practitioners and primary care physicians on rheumatic disease disparities. The Collaborative Initiatives Committee, or COIN, within the ACR pursues strategic activities that include projects that advance health equity. We also have an important area as far as advocacy to Congress through the ACR Government Affairs Committee that works to positively impact health disparities by addressing issues that present barriers to our patients in receiving the care they need, which includes maldistribution and high costs of medications.
Great. Adam, the ARP, any thoughts about sort of improving access to care? I mean, you mentioned APPs as like a fantastic way where that can happen. Any other sort of strategies that the ARP is thinking about to address these issues?
Yeah, I think for us, it's the really bringing together our many different disciplines to help tackle this challenge within ARP, and, how we can best reach patients with APPs, but also other providers and other disciplines that we have, using physical therapists or other occupational therapists within our discipline that can provide care to patients through telemedicine, telehealth, or different ways of reaching areas that are underserved in rural counties. We see that in my home state of North Carolina, we have a lot of different areas where there are not a lot of physical therapists or occupational therapists or rheumatologists in rural areas. So I think that's a way that we can work together to help address some of those shortage areas for ARP.
Yeah. And I wonder, for rheumatologists, we have a pretty sort of clear track about how to train future rheumatologists, in that you do residency, then you do rheumatology fellowship, either in pediatric or adult rheumatology, and then you become a rheumatologist. Is there a similar process for APPs or PTs or OTs or pharmacists, or some way to get them trained within rheumatology that the ARP is helping with?
In ARP, we're definitely working on developing our educational programs, our online educational programs, so that we can better train our APPs and other providers for some of the workforce challenges that we have now. But that also involves us developing new programs and developing new online educational offerings, which take time and investment. And so I think, that's one of the areas that, we continue to look for strategies on how that we can best use those educational offerings to onboard and attract new professionals, APPs, and other professionals into rheumatology.
So important. I think one of the logo or for the ACR, I think it's, we're here for you so you could be there for your patients. And, I think member engagement, you both mentioned, is crucial. Carol, what strategies, is the ACR using to try to support members within the ACR?
So as we mentioned earlier, Dr. Adam and I had co-chaired the Membership and Awards Committee last year. And one of the important initiatives that was actually started before we began our term, but formally adopted during this time, was a new membership model. And this was designed to really understand more about the needs and interests of our members and how to more effectively provide areas of importance to them as far as education, research, advocacy, and practice management. And with that, we hope to be able to develop new initiatives through our dedicated staff and the committee that will be directed towards membership support and engagement that's both nimble and flexible in meeting the members' needs.
Yeah, and Adam, for the ARP, what strategies do you have for 2025 where the ARP can best support its members?
I completely agree with Carol. Like our membership model and some of the changes that we made to the membership model are really, I think, crucial to attracting and maintaining members, especially for ARP, and looking at other models that, because like I mentioned before, the many different disciplines that exist within ARP. Also, one area is, improving our communication to our members in ARP, and we've revitalized or updated our communications that go out to our members that highlight and advance some of our educational offerings, some of our messages from our leadership, some of the areas that we're working on and tackling some of the challenges with workforce. And those are areas that our members have expressed interest in, and we working to help engage our members through those email communications that go out to them, and also at convergence and getting folks together and networking together in our different disciplines is another area, a way in which we're trying to work on engaging our members and keeping them updated on what we're trying to work on in ARP.
Great. All right. So we're recording this in January of 2025. Now, I want you to picture yourselves at ACR Convergence 2025, which I believe is going to be in Chicago in late October. Looking back at the year, Adam, what does success look like? Like, what do you hope to achieve that you can talk about at Convergence about, the things that you and the ARP have achieved this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think about it pretty often as we think about already getting emails about planning for Convergence.
It's always too early.
Yeah. So, and going back to the original question about priorities and how the areas of priority that ARP has put forth and ones that I completely want to see happen, maybe not all of them will happen this year, but for example, improving our volunteer experience so that, we keep attracting great volunteers, we keep them engaged in volunteering for ARP and ACR, and develop them as leaders for ARP in the future. Developing our educational platforms that, can help address the onboarding of ABPs or other professionals. I think that's a rolling out new educational offerings this year will be another big area for us that we can look back and say that was a good achievement for us to be able to develop and roll those out. Mentoring our future leaders of ARP, I think, as we look to develop our pathway and our members and volunteers in that pathway, I think it's important that we keep those individuals moving forward and supported so they feel that, being part of the leadership pathway will be successful for them.
Great. Carol, what about you? It's Convergence 2025 in Chicago. What are you going to be talking about? What successes are you going to be describing during Convergence?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about success for the ACR, I really think about that is defined by the success of our members. And again, that's what I will hope to be seeing as far as at Convergence 2025. Sustaining and expanding the initiatives that support our practicing clinicians, our investigators, and our trainees so that, as you pointed out earlier, so that they can be there for their patients really defines, I think, what we're trying to achieve as far as what success means for ACR.
Great. And you both mentioned about being involved in volunteering opportunities early on in your careers and how that has led you to now lead the ARP and ACR. Carol, how do you suggest members of the rheumatology community get involved in the ACR if they listen to this episode and want to take in your footsteps?
There's really many ways to be involved with ACR. And I would say really, the first and in many ways, arguably the most important step is to continue membership, because that really reinforces the concept of us as a community coming together through the ACR. Participation in our professional meetings, again, is another opportunity to engage with ACR and to be involved. And then finally, as you pointed out, volunteering, which is a way that members can become involved in supporting our mission and goals. Now, while many people sort of equate that with being on a committee or the board of directors, there are actually many activities in different capacities that people can volunteer with. We appreciate that our lives are busy and not everyone has a great deal of time, but they may have a brief period where they would like to become engaged. And this can include activities like being on a working group or a task force, a subcommittee, taking part in our advocacy, or being on a guidelines team. So there's really a very diverse range of activities. One thing to point out is that in 2025, the ACR is going to be launching an exciting update to our volunteer webpage that's going to include a complete listing of all of the volunteer activities for ACR and ARP, and also have a link to opportunities with the Rheumatology Research Foundation as well. And this will include descriptions of what would be involved in that volunteer activity, its time commitments, duration, and how one might pursue participation. So we're really excited to see that get launched.
Yeah, that's awesome. Adam, other thoughts about ARP volunteerism?
Yeah, I agree with Carol. The volunteers are what keep ACR and ARP moving forward, and we're always in need of volunteers. And I think the updates to the website are an exciting way to help simplify, but also provide an opportunity for folks to easily access volunteer opportunities, and reaching out to our nominations committees and asking questions is a great way to understand if you're a new volunteer. Like Carol mentioned, there's opportunities to kind of get started and ask questions and be involved. And as folks become more and more interested in volunteering, there's obviously ways to move up to chair and leadership. So, we're looking forward to the new volunteer website and access points that can help volunteers ask their questions and get involved.
Fantastic. Now, Adam, what legacy do you hope to leave as the leader of the ARP this year?
I mean, I think that, this goes back to the ACR mission and improving patient care. For me, and specifically, and as my background and clinical training as a physical therapist, it's how do we improve physical function and reduce pain and in patients with rheumatological conditions. And me in particular, it's research and researching areas to understand disease mechanisms. And, I think the interprofessional areas of ARP, bringing those together can bring a lot of power to these areas of improving patient outcomes through clinical practice and research. And, I think for me, an area that I'm passionate about, it's an area that I hope to inspire others like I was as a new volunteer to get involved and try to make those impactful changes for patients.
Fantastic. What about you, Carol? What legacy do you hope to leave as the president of the ACR?
Yeah, so as I think you already highlighted, as far as we're already talking about Convergence 2025, one of the things you rapidly come to realize is that your time as president is brief. And really the legacy that's important is not yours as a president, but it's that of the individual members of the organization. I think if I'm able to serve ACR in a manner that enhances our members' ability to achieve their own professional success and satisfaction in the care of their patients or the conduct of their research, and in coming together, as a rheumatology community, that's really the legacy that matters to me.
Amazing. What a great way to start 2025. I can't wait to see what each of you has and will do for the coming year. And I really look forward to your highlights of what you were able to do and that we'll hear at Convergence 2025. Carol and Adam, thank you so much for your time and good luck with everything that you have planned for this year.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. The leaders of the ACR and ARP discussing their vision for 2025. I really can't wait to see what they will achieve this year. Thank you all for listening, downloading, subscribing to our show, and for rating us with 5 stars or however many stars you think we deserve. You can find all of our show notes for this and other episodes at acronair.org, on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, I encourage you all to get involved in the ACR and ARP. And of course, stay healthy.